Hello everyone, Leo here, Chilean physician and science fiction author, and today I want to share with you some of the, I'm going to share with you what I talked about recently, just a few hours ago, in an event that I got invited at a university, which was awesome. It was really great. This was an invitation from the University Adolfo Ibañez at Viña del Mar, a coastal city 2 hours away from Santiago. I got permission from my hospital today, so I could go there and do this activity. And basically, it was an invitation for me as an author, originally to speak about my new book, but I think it kind of transformed into something broader, and what it ended up being, it was something to discuss about androids and robots and, let's say, artificial life in the Chilean science fiction panorama. So it was a fantastic experience overall. I always enjoy going there. I had gone before, I believe last year actually, and it's an invitation that I truly treasure a lot because it's in the library of the university, and there's a lot of students that are very interested in the topics, and it's a whole different thing than when you go to, for example, literary festivals, let's say, as opposed to a university setting. So it was fantastic. I want to share some photos with you so you can get an idea about that. And anyway, so I thought that it was proper for this channel, which is about Chilean science fiction, to tell you how I get to present them this idea of the robot or the android, let's say, in the Chilean scenario. So I'm going to be using the slides that I had. I think they're going to show up here probably, I don't know, but you'll get the idea. So I want to tell you what I did, what was my idea on that. So I had this presentation with me while we were discussing with the rest of the students and the professors about this topic. And first of all, I just have to thank some of my literary friends, writers and academics, especially Gabriel Saldias, which is going to be named here, because I talked with him about this, and he was the main person that actually gave me this the structure that I'm going to show you, that will be applied. So big thanks to him, and also to David Muñoz and to Maria Rivera, with whom I also speak about these topics, and they always enlighten me. So the first thing about this conversation was how to encompass this concept. If you're asked about, how do I speak about androids and robots in general, how do I put them all in one thing together? So as this also was in the context, of my new book, where I use some references to Magritte. That's the reason also why there is this image in there. And basically, the conclusion of how I would present this idea was in terms of, using Foucault and Magritte's postmodern idea of things defined as, things are something as long as they are not something else. So that's why there is this, how do we talk about this? Well, it's about all that's not human, but it's kind of alive. This is not a human. That's the reference there. That's the idea, which I think in Spanish would probably sound way smarter than what I'm thinking, what I'm saying. I'm smarter in Spanish. Nah, but you get what I mean, This first approach, it's hard to put all these things together, so let's do this approach. Let's talk about what's not human in this realm of concepts. And then came this taxonomy, pragmatic taxonomy, in terms, the words that you would usually find, and that I think are appropriate to discuss this. So this is how I put it, just to focus the conversation with the students. And the idea is, what are the names that these type of living creatures, or kind of like at least automatic things are not human, but not being are named. And you can go all the way back to sacred texts, as in the concept of the Golem, a creature that comes from inanimate matter. And then you can also go to another very, very old term, the automaton, the automata, which is from Greece, from back in those times, in terms of if the golem was an inanimate thing that came from inanimate matter, let's say, but it became a living creature, the automata would be more of a mechanism, of a machine of being able to work by itself, an automatic thing, let's say. And then you would get into the classic words that you would find in science fiction. And although robot would work better as a classification to mention before android, this is written like this because the word android is older than robot. But these are the concepts you would find, right? So the robot, which was a word that was used for the first time, by Karel Capek, the Czech author, in his theater novel, let's say. What's that in English? A play. Rur. I don't know how it's pronounced, but Rur, the Russian universal robots. And it's this automata that's clearly in terms of the machine concept. And then you can put the android in this type of creature, but it doesn't need to be a machine, it just has to be something humanoid, but not human. And then we get to this other, which I think it's a fascinating concept, the cyborg, which, although you can simplify as a machine that has, biological parts, or human that has mechanical parts, the classical concept. I like to vision it or to present it from, the Haraway point of view, from the Cyborg Manifesto, as this creature that basically challenges the concepts of the frontier between what's human, machine, and animal, that as the cyborg. That's a photo, that's an image from the other side of the slide. So that would be like the most complex of these creatures, let's say. And I just put the AI, just because I believe it shouldn't be in the taxonomic of this, because an artificial intelligence is kind of, as it's already there, but as it is something to be discussed nowadays, or it has its place. But it's obviously considered in the creatures before mentioned. And then another important thing, so now that that I had this way of presenting this idea of this type of creatures that we're going to talk about with this taxonomy, in terms of self-existing artificial living things. Another concept that I think it was a very interesting to mention was this idea of the Uncanny Valley that's presented here, that's in Spanish. Because I think it goes along. If you use that taxonomy in a kind of a chronological order of imagining concepts, if you put that in a way of in a linear, of course this is artificial, but if you put that in a chronological way of moving forward, then you would have to mention this, the Uncanny Valley, this concept from 1906 by German psychiatrists, which is about those things that make us uneven because we can't really tell, if it's human or not. And that concept, it's involved in this evolutionary taxonomy presented before. And then of course you can, if you push the boundaries forward, I believe that you eventually reach this point of speaking about transhumanism in terms of still having humans but with more things, with all the complexity that involves. But then you will eventually reach the posthuman as a concept where you're past the human. And then of course then I believe all this dialogue about robots, androids, and mechanical machines, and and cyborgs, then it becomes something else. Then you go into a different realm of post-human, because and I think this is interesting, because most of this topic, let's go, the robotic android topic, functions, and I'm going back to the first definition that I was mentioning of something to be understood by what it is not. If you remove the human, then it's also hard to envision these concepts. But you could go forward, but you know what I mean. That's what I mean by when you go into the post-humanism, it's then you're not speaking about robots and androids in a way. You're going to go into something else. You're going to go into imagining different types of lives altogether. You can get into the alien, which is a different topic. Anyway, so then having that as a conceptual place to start, this is what I started with, so we could understand what are we talking about. Then, and this is Gabriel, as I said, this is his classification, but I loved it, so I'm gonna use it till the end of my days, probably. How to think about it in terms of how Chilean science fiction has approached this. And it can be mentioned from these three different categories in terms of how separate this creature is from the concept of human. And then you would have the explicit separation, which I'm going to show you, the implicit one, and when there is no separation. What do I mean by that? First one, the explicit separation. It's about the classic robot, the archetypical robot, let's say the Asimovian one, where you clearly have something that you're supposed to know that it's not human, but it's still something to be representing something about the human existence itself. But but it has this classical, evident difference. And in the case of the Chilean scenario, the one that I would say it's the most important to get to know would say Hugo Correa's Los Títeres, or that's the one that I believe it's a good example of Chilean science fiction working on this archetypical robot. And as you know from other videos of my channel, Hugo Correa, from the golden age of science fiction here in Chile and the Anglosphere, and here it's actually he works Los Títeres. This book in particular it's a collection of stories, and it's actually it's more about it contains more of the simulacras in terms of these are humans that would use a robot body to perform certain activities, but in the stories, the robotic part of it, like if I have a robot, so I stay home and the robot goes do the work for me, they become separate entities. So the robot in these stories that would initially be something controlled absolutely by human eventually gets to be a proper robotic existence by itself, and then it gets into all this existential crisis of the humans thinking that perhaps it's better to be the robot, and all on the other way around as well. And then the other separation, and this is what I mean by the robot. It's easier to understand in terms of chronological order as opposed as the android, although the term android is older because it encompasses more. But in terms of science fiction, let's imagine the android as coming a step forward in terms of the historical development of science fiction. In Chile and in the Anglosphere, I would say as well. And this implicit separation is just about, when you have robots that are not androids in terms of humanoid, then that you cannot tell the difference. So you're entering the Uncanny Valley. And then, of course, where there is Tom York, because in my book there's a story that references Paranoid Android, the majestic song from Radiohead. And if there is something to mention here, or what I use as example for this conversation in terms of the Chilean science fiction, I mentioned Flores para un Cyborg as one of the ideas of an android, which is a very peculiar character in that book. And in terms of another example, but this is a controversial one because it's fascinating because of that. It's Juana y la Cibernética by Elena Aldunate, which is it's controversial in terms of what is it, but I think that's what makes it a good fit for this, because it's the story of a female worker, just a female worker that she gets trapped in a factory, and she has this erotic encounters with one of the machines in there. But the interesting thing is that if you were to read that story just by itself and not to know anything about the author or the context where or when it was written, you would not think in terms of science fiction or even fantastic literature. It works as as a type of realism in terms of maybe naturalism of just like the harshness of the working conditions of a working person, in this case a factory worker, female character. But as a reader, you know that this author, that she was always involved with the science fiction scenario in Chile, and that she was working from that place. So that situational aspect of it can allow you, but this is arguable, of course, it's arguable. Some people would say no, but that may allow you to put it within these categories that I'm mentioning. It's a whole topic by itself. And then of course you've got the last categorization, the no separations, which again in the chronological aspect you go into the cyborg, which is of course a postmodern concept by itself, as I started with Foucault, just so this is proper embracement of that idea of no bound, of the deconstruction of certain elements, and here you can find some of the robots that I use in some of my stories, although I tend to stay more in the androids, I believe, if we imagining it this way. But here you can find, for example, I believe in certain stories by M.M. Lu, Chilean author of science fiction. Some of her stories, I believe, have this concept. And also you can have some of Gabriel's stories. I think you could put them in here, although he's now working on something else. But this is something that I would say it's more common nowadays because of the period of time of the ideas that are surrounding us. So that as a general concept. And finally, this is let's say the ideas of what's happening in the future, or the new stuff, of the new explorations, contemporary explorations. And what I believe are a good summary of this are these three ideas that I put here in terms of, if we're going to speak about what's happening right now, what explorations are we seeing. There is one, just the writing of this concept, of this already written concepts from a nostalgic, romantic and decadent point of view, in terms of let's write a story about robots, although we know that this concept, it's obsolete, it's already back in time, there's nothing new in it, but you could artistically write about something from that perspective. And there, what I have to mention again, Gabriel Saldia, because he does that a lot. And then you have another interesting possibility, which is the complete elimination of the human being, but that again gets tricky in terms of how can you still have this robots, androids, creatures that are in their core something of a reflection of the humans. How can you deal with them if you truly remove the human? Can you still speak of something like that? Is it still within the realm? And it's interesting, and I'm thinking, for example, Arturo Sierra, Chilean writer, of course. I'm giving the references because it's about the Chilean science fiction. He's got a really, really, really interesting story, Lemniscata, which is kind of imagining the life of certain space probes and satellites farther away in the future. And so these are kind of, artificial structures, so they could be placed within this realm of artificial things, and it's an exercise to not make them human, to truly make something not human in its function itself, as a robot, as a mechanical, as an automatic, as an automaton. Cool thing. And thirdly, the search for the rehumanization, I believe that's just this idea of, working the other way around. Let's imagine that there are these artificial beings and they want to find the humanity in a way, or they are grasping for something human. It's like kind of just working from the other way around. And I personally like that topic in particular because it comes to mind this fascinating story that I read from an American writer, The Beast Adjoins. I don't remember where was the magazine that it was published. I think it was Asimov's or Analog, I'm not sure. But The Beast Adjoins by, I believe it's Ted Kotmaska, his name. It's a story that has the concept of the physical concept of the von Neumann-Wigner hypothesis, which states that perhaps it's a human consciousness that causes the collapse of reality. This whole idea of when you learn about that, certain subatomic particles behave in a way or another once they are being observed. Let's simplify it that way, in the quantum realm. So this hypothesis is, the concept of what if it's something in our type of consciousness that can collapse reality itself and make it actually move. And in this story, in The Beast Adjoins, basically there are robots, androids, and they just, even though they become conscious as humans, they have, let's imagine they're perfectly humans in terms of all the faculties. They just don't have the collapsing ability. So they cannot move, they cannot do anything if they don't have a human or something human to collapse reality for them to move, to exist. So they hunt humans and just to possess this thing to be able to exist. Fascinating story. I love that one. It blew my mind. And I think that topic of the research of the rehumanization, I believe it's interesting in this categories, in these taxonomies. Sorry, that was me. It's late. It's not. I don't usually record late at night, but I wanted to do this today. That this happened, so I didn't lose the motivation to do it. And so that's what I did. And then I mentioned to the students this book, Despertaran, which I've mentioned in other videos. It's poetry, science fiction poetry. But what I like about this, and from David Munoz that I mentioned at the beginning of this long video, long videos. It's cool because he does this play on the chronology of imagining this periods of existence, ways of existence. So he goes from the human, the automaton, the robot, the android, the cyborg, the artificial intelligence, from the perspective of science fiction written in the shape of poetry, let's say. So it's just to emphasize a great book, by the way, on how to approach this topic, and especially in terms of what has been done in Chilean science fiction. And that's about it. Well, then I shared some time with the students over there. I had a great time. Talked a little bit about. It was supposed mainly about my last books, but it was general conversation, I think, and it was fantastic. And as I mentioned, in terms of what I do, I think I stay a lot within the android realm or the robotic realm, just because I do like my robots to be mirrors of humans in terms of conveying certain emotions, in terms of finding certain feelings, human emotions. That's I wouldn't know how to put it, because I would rather let my stories tell by themselves, but I do stay in that place. I don't think I've worked a lot in terms of working on the post-human, directly. But perhaps I'll do. I don't know. But it's an interesting thing. So basically that's what I want to share with you. That I had this activity, and I have to mention that what a fantastic thing is when you are a writer and you get invited to these environments, university environments, and you feel that place. This is just a personal experience, a personal thing that I want to mention, because as I'm a physician, as I work as I'm a medical doctor, sometimes it goes a long times when you don't have literary activities, and it's easy to fall into some existential nihilistic ideas in terms of like, you know, like what's going on with what I've written, or where is it? It becomes something that you kind of goes away, and this kind of activities kind of make you embody for a brief moment of time the idea of a writer sharing with an audience, and I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Not sure if I'm saying it, if I'm conveying my idea the way I want to, but let's say it was nurturing to the soul. That's just the easy wording of that. So yeah, I want to share that with you. Had a great day today. Went to visit another city. Had a wonderful time in the university. Got to speak about this type of things. I wanted to share with you. This is gonna be a long video. I'm not sure how it's gonna be edited, but it's okay, man. It's okay. It's okay. It's fun. It's just cool. It's a posthumanistic conceptualization. Nah, that's okay. Now I'm just talking about random stuff. So that's it. Probably do another video, a shorter one, and more short videos as well, because you know that format, it's fun. But this one's necessary as well, I believe. So let me know what you think about this. The way that I put the idea. It's not I, because you know there is more people involved in this. But let me know what you think about this approach to the artificial creatures and this type of taxonomy, because I think it's interesting. It's easy to get lost in the frontiers as science fiction itself. And if you have more ideas of books, Chilean science fiction books that can be placed as good examples of these topics, you can write it down in the comments, because of course I'm gonna miss a lot. This was just a traveling through this topic. So that's it. Take care. Hope you like this video. If you reach this far, thank you. Just hope you had fun just with this session. That's it. So let's see you in the next one. Stay cyborg, I guess. That's the end of it. Stay cyborg. Remain cyborg. Remain cyborg. Till the next one. Bye.